Bienvenidos to another special episode of the Nerd Byword podcast. Yeah, we're going Spanglish again today because we have Mr. Jarred Lujan, who has a current Kickstarter going on. It's been fully funded, but if you want to be a part of this awesome project, Twin Blades. I mean, like, here's the selling point, guys. Aztecs and swords. Like, what more do you need? So, Twin Blades. We're going to sit down in our Byword Big Talk segment with author Jarred Lujan and be able to talk about that project. But first, it's not a complete episode without the nerd news segment. Dave, you got a ghost story for us this week. What's going on?
You know, in the gaming wars, if you will, between Sony and Microsoft, Sony appears to have had an edge for quite a while due to its stable of exclusive original games. And one of those games is about to become a big screen movie. Samurai game Ghost of Tsushima is set to be directed by John Wick director Chad Stahelski. Asad Quizabash, head of PlayStation production, said, "We love working with creative partners like Chad who have a passion for our games, ensuring we can create rich adaptations that will excite our fans and new audiences." End quote. The game focuses on Jin Sakai as he tries to protect his homeland during the Mongol invasion. The open world looks fantastic, although I've not had a chance to play the game myself yet. Here's the thing, though. I love Japanese cinema, particularly Akira Kurosawa movies, which this game apparently homaged quite a bit. So I'm really psyched to see that a movie might be coming out based on a video game that is basically an extended homage to Akira Kurosawa movies. I can only imagine the visual style that we'll get to see on the big screen will also be paying homage to this fantastic director. So I'm really excited for this movie, almost more so than the game. Now, really, Sony, let's get Horizon Zero Dawn as a movie into production, and you can shut up and take my money. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, so again, here I am, a Microsoft and now Nintendo gamer, and I've always been on the outside looking in at Sony. And even more so than like the Spider-Man games, even this game was the one that almost made me, pursue a PlayStation console because I love Japanese culture. It's so rich and its history is just so fascinating. That entire samurai code of honor. I mean, I'm such a huge TMNT fan, and that's in large part to the influence of Japanese culture on the title. So, oh man, I'm so torn. But at least I can watch the movie without having to buy a console. So I'm super excited for this one, man.
Yeah, and really, anytime you look at a game trailer, it just looks fantastic. I have, a PS4 sitting in my living room, and I just haven't gotten around to picking this game up, although it seems to be so far up my alley. It's not even funny. I mean, it's combining some of my all-time favorite things. I mean, there's video gaming, there's Japanese culture, there's history, there's swords. I mean, it looks absolutely fantastic. And of course, then, the homages to Akira Kurosawa. So, I'm all about this. I have high hopes for this movie. I hope it makes it through development and we'll get to see it in a few years on the big screen. Now, Chris, you have an interesting news story that I have quite a bit to say about today. What have you got for us?
Oh, man. August 6th can't come fast enough. And this, we're both fully vaccinated now against COVID-19. This may be our first visit to the theaters as a dynamic duo in a long time. But fans were treated to their first look at James Gunn's The Suicide Squad, and needless to say, it did not disappoint. And this was textbook James Gunn, man. Think of it like an R-rated version of the Guardians of the Galaxy. There's classic rock, there's cracking wise, badassery, and dick jokes abound in this 3-minute preview of the film. The cast, which we already knew was top-notch, really seems to deliver here. I'm really interested. Even the little bite-sized bit of chemistry that we saw, I'm really excited to see how that develops over the full-length film. John Cena and Idris Elba were the standouts for me. Scratch that. This is King Shark's world, and we're just living in it. Clearly the faraway winner of this trailer. Margot Robbie continues to shine as Harley Quinn. I really want to go watch Birds of Prey again. And I can't wait to see more of Peter Capaldi and Michael Rooker as whatever those weird-ass characters were. This is a heavy dose of weird hodgepodge awesomeness, and I simply cannot wait, man.
Yeah, I mean, what more can I say to that? I am so very excited for this movie. The first Suicide Squad movie, for whatever reason, simply didn't work. The actors were working their butts off, but the script just wasn't quite there, I guess. It was such a disappointment for me, and I had such high hopes for it. This, on the other hand, this is James Gunn's baby, and I've made no secret out of the fact that I love this guy's work ever since I first encountered the movie Slither. I have been just absorbing James Gunn movies, anything that I can get my hands on. His Guardians of the Galaxy movies truly captured my imagination, and to me at least are just basically an extended homage to Farscape, one of my all-time favorite television series. I cannot wait to see his take on Suicide Squad. What I love most about Gunn is that he's so willing to take obscure characters like, Polka Dot Man and put his unique stamp on them, and I'm so psyched to see what he does with some of the characters here. Then there's the fact that his take, both visually and dialogue-wise, on Harley Quinn is starting to already feel like one of my favorites since the original. I always hated how subsequent writers and artists try to, sex up Harley to turn her into some kind of male fantasy. Birds of Prey, I think, was a step in the right direction when it comes to this problem. And Gunn, at least from what we've seen so far, seems poised to continue this trend. So I'm really excited for this. The humor, gross out and firmly tongue-in-cheek really landed for me. The characters look fantastic. And the bad guy revealed at the end of the trailer is a freaking legend in DC Comics that I cannot wait to see on the big screen. So in short, I'm all in, man. I need to see this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm president and CEO and founder of the Idris Elba fan club, and just seeing him take the lead in this as this character of Bloodsport that I know absolutely nothing about, and I totally echo what you say about Gunn. He's just going to take the most obscure characters that you know absolutely nothing about and turn them into your absolute favorites. And bringing Michael Rooker along, his brother Sean, it's like getting the band back together, but then also going on a different tour that you never knew was possible. I'm super psyched. All right, that wraps up our nerd news segment. When we come back from this, our first break, we're going to sit down with Jarred Lujan and talk about swords and Aztecs. Twin Blades is coming up. Welcome back, nerds. For today's Byword Big Talk, we're joined by Jarred Lujan, author of the upcoming Kickstarter project, The Twin Blades. Jarred, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you guys for having me.
So we always like to start our interviews with our guest's nerd origin story. When did you first realize you were a nerd, and what were the strongest influences from the nerd world for you?
I think I've been a nerd my whole life. My mom made me watch Star Wars when I was 6 years old, and I was just hooked immediately. So Star Wars is definitely the biggest nerd sort of thing that I have. It's the thing I'm super passionate about. So that's easily the only answer there. 6 years old, Star Wars, watched episode 4 and been hooked ever since.
So what set you on the path towards becoming a creator yourself and a writer?
A few things. I think I've just sort of had a knack for storytelling. It's something that I've always enjoyed, is I guess what I mean. I grew up reading a lot. I grew up really liking, movies and TV shows and things like that. And it just took me a while to figure out what exactly how I wanted to tell stories. And so it was really a matter of, I got really into manga in middle school, and that sort of transitioned me into comics. And that's where I just kind of found my knack. I've been in and out of comics, really, really intensely for about 10 years. And then I've been, as of 5 years ago, it's been an every Wednesday thing for me ever since.
So have you worked on any comics before Twin Blades? What's your writing career look like before this project here?
Yeah, so I got into writing comics as a real intense thing about 2016. I was mainly doing small indie comics, just small 5 or 6 pagers, and I wound up getting into the talent search for Mad Cave Studios in 2019. So my first miniseries was through them. It was called Dryfoot, and we just wrapped that up back in February. As a matter of fact, the trade came out in February, and this is my follow-up project to that, as a matter of fact.
Can you tell us a little bit about the Mad Cave Studios talent search? What was that process like for you?
It was great. I really walked. I love Mad Cave. They've been so good to me in so many ways. But so Mad Cave ran their first one, I think, in 2018. I lost that one. I definitely tried and lost. And then in 2019, I got convinced by my buddy Anthony Cleveland, who's also a winner. He wrote Show's End and Stargazer for Mad Cave. But he convinced me to give it another shot, and I won. And so like they kind of just gave me a general idea of what story they had in mind. Like we had characters and really basic plot idea. And I just kind of took that and ran with it. And that became Dryfoot. But yeah, Mad Cave's talent search is really, really amazing. They are a really fantastic company full of fantastic people. It was the whole process of it, they really it's really hard, I think, for like publishing companies to put their energy and their weight behind and money, behind smaller creators, in their first miniseries. And Mad Cave did that for me in the middle of the COVID-19 stuff. Dryfoot was originally announced last February, and then the diamond shutdown happened, and so they didn't back down from it. They kept us working. They kept marketing the book, and we got a new release date that I believe was last July. And and so it was great. It was a really, really crazy process. It's a really crazy time to break into comics, I think, but it was a really, really great process and great time.
All right, so which brings us to the reason we're here today, Twin Blades. What's the elevator pitch for this comic? Tell us all about it.
Mexicans with swords is my elevator pitch.
I'm in. I'm sold.
Yeah, it's so Twin Blades started off as a Twitter joke. I had said something like major comic publishers really want these really in-depth immigration stories, and I just want to give Mexicans swords. And Twitter blew up. It just exploded. My notifications were killed for 2 days. So I was kind of at the time, I only had the baby idea of Twin Blades. And after that, I was like, oh, I've got to put a bunch more energy into this now. Now I have to figure out how to do it. But it's a really cool little book. I know that's way more than an elevator pitch, but it's a really great book about, Aztec mythos. And there's a little bit of science fiction in there. And it's about, family, these two twins that have kind of an estranged relationship. And, but they share this responsibility for these two magical swords. And we just kind of see, it's a story about, family, about believing in yourself and your purpose on Earth, and magic swords.
Now, your Kickstarter page teases that the book blends science fiction and Aztec mythology. Besides Star Wars, what do you consider to be a strong influence on your take on science fiction?
Yeah, I think so. Comic. Well, I mean, I'm just gonna go with everything. So, East of West, I think, is one of my most influential sci-fi things. Rant is a novel by Chuck Palahniuk that I also really, really love. And then I'm obviously a big fan. I don't know if that's obvious, but I'm a big fan of the 80s movies Terminator, Alien, and Predator. Which all have sort of this blend of, I mean, the first Predator and Aliens whole thing was horror and science fiction kind of melding together. I guess Terminator as well, but I felt more like an action movie than anything. But and then Infinity Gauntlet is another one. Jim Starlin's original Infinity Gauntlet. Well, the first time I read that comic, it blew my mind. I was just stunned. And I think the recurring theme in all of those is in terms of how it influences the way that I approach science fiction, is that it always makes science fiction really dirty. Science fiction, I think, sort of why I'm not a Star Trek person. And I know someone's going to hear this and they're going to be like, well, that's because Star Wars is science fantasy, because that's what my uncle used to always tell me. But Star Trek feels so clean to me. Everything, it's so it's so focused on elevating, science and what its goals are and what its purpose is. I'm really interested in when people take that and they make it really dirty, really grimy, and bring it down to like my level. And so I think that's kind of where all of those things sort of have a similar theme in, is that they're all range from grandiose to really small and minimal, but all of them really have a really dirty, grimy taste to the science fiction they present.
So I'm a huge mythology nut. It's one of my nerddoms. Why did you decide to go with Aztec mythology in this story? Why do you think the Aztec culture remains so interesting, even hundreds of years later?
Yeah, I think part of it is that no one knows anything about the Aztec mythos, right? It hasn't really penetrated the cultural zeitgeist, sort of. We kind of hear a lot about Greek and Roman, and there's even a lot of Egyptian mythos that people are really into, and we all know their gods and Zeus and yada yada. But Aztec mythology sort of has this different approach to it altogether, but it also has like its own pantheon. It has its own set of gods and their own purposes. It has its own creation myths. I think in terms of like, why did I decide to incorporate it? My family, the Mexican side of my family, is very proudly descended, has an Aztec bloodline, where we have a direct familial relation to that kind of culture and that ancestry. And that's something that I'm really proud of, and I've always been really proud of. And so I really wanted to kind of bring that to the forefront and share that, because it's such a really cool new take. It's such a wildly different departure from what we know about mythology in general, with how the Aztecs handle it. In terms of like culturally relevant, I think Aztec mythology has like this really positive. Aztecs had a different view of death, right? That death wasn't the conclusion of existence, and in a different way than I think we interpret it in terms of like the contemporary Judeo-Christian approach to it. I think like the Aztecs really believed in an afterlife that was kind of a continuation more than anything else. And I really find that as something that's culturally fascinating, is this different, morbid approach. Well, not even morbid, this different approach to death. That's really where everybody knows Dia de los Muertos is a really popular holiday in Mexico, and that's where its origins come from, is this Aztec approach to and view of death. And I think that's always going to be something that is culturally relevant, and that maybe that view is a little bit morbid, but I find the Aztec approach to it to be not just positive, but refreshing, I think is the word.
So how did you go about actually doing, research into Aztec mythology so you have a jumping off point for this book? What was your process like?
I read a lot. I read a ton of books by people that were smarter than me. The good news is that I spent a lot of time studying that on my own free time for several years, since I was 18. So I have this really wide background in that sort of mythology, and I really was just trying to condense it. Once I figured out I really wanted it to take place within Aztec mythos, because the first couple of ideas of the Twin Blades were really different, and I really wanted to incorporate the Aztec mythos. So after I figured that out, I was like, okay, so I've got to narrow it down. And that narrowing down brought me to the myth of Xolotl at the creation of the fifth sun, where Xolotl refuses to sacrifice himself to create the fifth sun, and he actually hides as a maize plant, and he ends up being so ashamed by it that he cries his eyes out, and they literally fall from his head. And that's what the Twin Blades are made out of. They're literally forged from Xolotl's eyes. And so once I figured out what I wanted to do, it was just really narrowing it down to where can I incorporate this? How can I add to the myth, right? Because I don't want to change anything. I don't want to disrespect the mythology. I want to just kind of make an addition to it. And so that was kind of where I started off on. But yeah, the short answer is a lot of reading by people that have spent their whole lives studying this, that are smarter than me.
So tell us a little bit about the artist that you're working with on Twin Blades, Julio Suarez. How did you connect, and what makes this person the perfect artist for the book?
Yeah, I found Julio on Twitter, as a matter of fact. He's a really talented artist. He is really clever, and one of the things that I decided on with the Twin Blades is that I wanted to do it with an artist, a specifically Mexican artist who shared that cultural importance and that cultural respect that I did. And Julio fits that bill. So he lives in Mexico City, where the story takes place, which is obviously an extra bonus points. But Julio is also very into and very proud of the Aztec origins that he has. And so we kind of just really clicked together. When I sent him the project, he was super into it, and or when I sent him the pitch for it, he was super into it, and we just kind of worked from there. It was a really collaborative effort, figuring out everything that we wanted to do, and it was a really good and process in terms of like it was just like a perfect link up between our personalities, what we wanted to do with the story, and our respect and love for our backgrounds and our culture.
Now, Twin Blades is created by an entirely Latinx team. Why do you think representation in comics, Latinx creators telling Latinx stories, is so very important?
Oh, man. Do we have enough time for this answer?
Well, let's just expound it. Take your time.
Yeah, no. I'm joking mainly. I think whenever I see stories that really heavily involve Latin or Latinx characters, it's usually in the context of either one, drug cartels, two, Dia de los Muertos, or three, immigration. And that's sort of like, it's just bland. It's just bland. And I don't have any disrespect to anybody doing an immigration story. Like, I think those are super important. And I have friends that are writing immigration stories right now, as a matter of fact, and I respect that, and I respect that the cultural relevancy that has. I think that the problem comes in with publishers who only want to publish that story because they only see Latin demographics as immigrants, and I think that's a huge issue. And I really just wanted to tell a story that was like, even Dryfoot, to its own extent, and to be like a little self-critical. Dryfoot Ends is a really heavy story, and I really just wanted to make something that could be fun, that it was a Latin story created by Latin creators that was fun and that we could have a good time creating, and it wasn't something super grounded in reality. It wasn't something about immigration, and nobody wears a sugar skull or anything like that, and we just have fun with it. And so that's kind of where I think that you get not just a more authentic approach to the storytelling and how we represent our people, but you get a more authentic and a better and a new story. I don't think there's anything quite like Twin Blades that's in comics, at least. And I think that's something it's new and it's fresh, and it's going to be a really fun story for a lot of people.
And I think that's a fascinating development. I think of, the recent release of Raya and the Last Dragon, and how a lot of people who are of South Asian ancestry are saying that, Asian culture is not this monolith. It's not just this one thing. And from my background, teaching Spanish and Latinx culture and showing kids and trying to be that go-between where like it's so much more than what you see in pop culture, and like when I try to show them that, like, yes, they have like day-to-day type of things that you can relate to, and it's just not like you said, sugar skulls and just like cartoony type stuff. That it is just really, I think the more that we include diverse voices in the creative process, the more stories that are going to get told from an authentic standpoint, and just so much growth is going to come as a result.
Yeah. So, and like going off of that, like sugar skulls and immigration, or sugar skulls and Dia de los Muertos, while those are fine, and I don't have any issues with them culturally, it's not all of Latin America. Like, like someone in even when it comes to like the Twin Blades, right? Like we Aztecs didn't have a monopoly on the indigenous culture in that region. There was the Mayans and the Incas who had their own different cultures and smaller tribes and things like that that had different representations and different ideas of creation and things like that. So yeah, I mean, I 100% agree. Like we have to have something that diversifies how we present Latin America in terms of like how someone from Chile and Ecuador and Venezuela and Brazil, all these different interpretations of our culture and our ancestry and things like that, I think is absolutely an important thing.
So tell us a little bit about your Kickstarter for Twin Blades. What are your goals? What rewards can backers look forward to?
Yeah, the Twin Blades Kickstarter is launching on the 16th. And so it should be live by the time that this goes up. Like we're trying to get to 3,500. 3,500 is going to pay printing costs, and it's going to pay the artists for the remaining of the artists. I'm not right at 3,500. I'm not trying to make any money. I personally am just trying to get the book made, which has been like I don't really care because I've had a really fun time working on the big book. So. In terms of like rewards, you can get digital copies of the book. You can get physical copies of the book. You can also, if you're a comic creator, you can get a script review by me. So up to 32 pages, I'll review your script, give you notes, tell you what I think. I also have a creator workshop that I'm offering where you and I can Zoom or whatever for 30 minutes. You can ask me questions. I think that's more for like people that are really just barely getting into the process, so that you can ask questions like if you don't know anything about like IP, or if you don't know how a script looks, or you don't know how to go about contacting artists, things like that. I can help with. And if you're not into those, if you just like comics, there's also you can get a bunch of signed Dryfoot stuff. Dryfoot #1 sold out in like 2 days. So I have first print copies of the cover for people that I'm going to sign and send out to people if they get that tier. You can also get both #1 covers, the first print and the second print. And then I've got one that's like the trade paperback along with Twin Blades. So if you missed it and all you want to do is really read it, that's a perfect tier for you. I also have like one that I've been calling the ultimate Dryfoot Twin Blades tier, where it's like every cover of Dryfoot and the trade and Twin Blades and all of it. You can get all of it in one fell swoop. So there's a lot of stuff on there. It's really, really cool. So yeah, I really hope, I think there's like a lot to offer people, hopefully.
Crowdfunding has become extremely popular, even among professional published comic book writers. What are your thoughts on that whole ordeal? Do you think crowdfunding sites like Kickstarter should be reserved for the up-and-coming talent, the indie folks, or is it more the merrier?
I'm really comfortably in the side that Kickstarter should be for the indie side of the industry. I don't think Keanu Reeves or Scott Snyder need a Kickstarter. But like to the credit of the point is like Kickstarter wasn't necessarily designed for that, right? There's nothing that stops them from using it. So if you're a company and that's what you're going to use it for, and they let you, then like whatever, point to you, I guess. It's not something that's going to keep me up at night. But I have a lot of friends. I have a lot of indie friends and a lot of people that feel that like Scott Snyder and Keanu Reeves and the Power Rangers being on Kickstarter is a good thing, and they think that it draws people to Kickstarter to find comics. I don't personally think I see that. I don't think that I've experienced that personally, and like the way that I've seen my friends' Kickstarters do, and the way their analytics come up. But I think it should be reserved for indies. I think if you can get a book at Image just with a phone call, you probably don't need to be someone who crowdfunds their book. But it is what it is. It's as long as it's not against the rules, I'm not going to make a big stink about it.
So what is your overall vision for Twin Blades? Do you have hopes or plans to continue the book beyond the first 44-page story, or is this sort of a done-in-one situation?
Well, I don't know. I think it depends on how popular and if people like it. There's always, The thing about the Twin Blades is that it starts off with, two magic swords, and they've existed forever, and so there's a lot of history that we could explore. There's a lot of situations that we could kind of take a look at, and what would this be in this scenario? I wrote it as a one shot. I meant for it to be one and done, but it does leave off with maybe there being some potential for more. So I would personally love to do more if that's something that I think we could fund, But right now I do have I'm planning one more Kickstarter one shot this year, and I've got like a bunch of anthology work, and so in terms of like it coming out. It's really gonna, in terms of prioritizing it, I'm gonna have to see a pretty crazy response.
I see that's really interesting because I've been over the last few days kind of embroiled in a bit of a discussion on social media with various other comic book fans about the notion of storytelling where you kind of leave it all on the table and tell a complete story versus saving things for subsequent potential sequels, and whether it's smart to hold back something. How do you feel about that?
I think that, man, it's hard because like as if you're an indie person and you're smart, you want readers to have more reason to come back, right? But I really do embrace the philosophy of coming in, telling the story you want to tell, and getting out. Dryfoot has a pretty conclusive ending. So, and that was my first book, which maybe isn't the best idea, but I did it. So we came in, we told the story we wanted to tell, we got out. But like Twin Blades, I wrote it as a one shot, and I don't know if I have an idea for a sequel. And so like what I was saying is I could do, there's several other there's a history of wielders. It's not just these two. So we could kind of explore something else. I think as a storyteller, I think it's better to come in and be done with it. To me, especially if you're an indie person, like I understand that financially as a career, it might be a better move to keep readers wanting more, but you have no guarantee that you're going to be able to finish that story. You can get a 5-page green light or a 5-issue green light, but your story takes 12 issues. That seems like something you might just want to put on the back burner until you know that you're good at you're popular enough where you can get 12 issues instead. Because otherwise that would drive me crazy. Maybe it's just me that I know that would drive me up a wall if I knew I had a 12 issue story and it had to get cut short early, and all I got to do was like a 4 or 5 issue part of it. And so I don't know. I think the best thing for me creatively is come in, do whatever I want to do, and then get out. So I'm like, right now, whenever I do pitch, I don't even pitch anything over 4 or 5 issues. Everything that I have that's larger than that, I'm saving for one day I'm hopefully allowed to.
So do you have any other current projects that are cooking that you can tease our audience?
Yeah, I have a 4-issue sci-fi story, big sci-fi story that's coming out through another publisher, not Mad Cave. It's going to be it's like Die Hard meets Guardians of the Galaxy. So that'll come out. I think that's coming out in the summer of this year, and that's going to be a 4-issue miniseries. So I'm not allowed to say anything else because I have an NDA, and I'm sorry, but that's going to be really cool. It's a really, really funny, goofy story, and I'm really excited for it. I've also got stories in the Big Hype anthology that's about to wrap up. I've got another one in Yule, which launches on Kickstarter in April. That's another Aztec story. It's an Aztec horror story. And I think I've got another Kickstarter coming out that's probably going to be in the summer. I don't have enough details to really be able to tell people that one yet. I really like keeping the Kickstarter stuff close to my chest. So, but yeah, if that's something, if you think the Twin Blades looks cool, if you thought Dryfoot was good, it's going to be something that's very different from both of them, but it's really exciting.
And where can people go to support you and your work and keep up with your future projects? Where can they find you online?
Yeah, so I have my Twitter is I'm really active on Twitter at Jarred Lujan, JarredLujan, and I'm really active on Twitter. I'm on Instagram at the exact same handle, where I pretty much just post pictures of my dog. But she's cute, so that's cool. That helps. I also have a mailing list that I have a newsletter. I send out an email once a month on the first of every month. That is available on my website, which is lujanwrites.com. Writes like you're writing a letter. And you can go there. You can read a bunch of my early free short comics. You can sign up for my newsletter. You can get more details about Dryfoot. There's plenty of stuff there. Learn a little bit more about me, I guess. I have a really short bio on there.
That wraps up our Byword Big Talk. Thank you so much, Jarred, for joining us today, and best of luck with your Kickstarter.
Thank you all for having me.
All right, that wraps up our Byword Big Talk. Thanks to Jarred Lujan. Be sure to go to check out Twin Blades, now available on Kickstarter. I'm a supporter. Make sure that you are too, and get some awesome, awesome content. When we come back from this, our final break, we're going to hit you with 2 more patented nerd commendations. All right, we are here for our final segment, Nerd Commendations. Dave, you're headed back to the infinite frontier. What's on the agenda for you?
Time for something innovative, for something interesting, for something that's just plain fun. Batman Superman number 16 is the first issue of the series that is part of DC Comics' Infinite Frontier initiative. And if this is any indication of where DC is headed in the future, I have to say it's a good direction. The book, written by Gene Yang and art by Ivan Reis, tells 2 tales simultaneously. A story of Superman, starring Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen, and a Batman and Robin story. Both appear influenced by the Golden Age and Silver Age of comics in both design and story. Structurally, the issue is fascinating. You have 2 film reels running across each page. The top reel tells the story of Superman. The bottom reel tells the story of Batman. As the story unfolds, it becomes increasingly clear that each story takes place in its own universe. In the Batman story, Superman appears to have died when his rocket crashed into Earth. In the Superman story, Batman's mother actually survived, and Bruce Wayne is basically a pampered coward. Still, the 2 stories converge in a fascinating climax that hints at more fascinating story yet to come. This book, Kris, simply sparks joy. It's tightly scripted, with a light touch and a clear love of these characters and their history. Even the Batman component of the book contains some humor and a dash of optimism, something that modern Batman comic books seem to be pretty much devoid of. This is the kind of fun that I love to have while reading superhero comics. It's a great first issue to a new story arc, and really just a great indicator of the kind of stories that DC Comics will be able to tell with their Infinite Frontier initiative. So, seeing these very alternate takes on Batman and Superman, and kind of seeing how they all, both of these takes are trying to converge, it is absolutely fascinating. And I'm very excited to read the rest of the story. It's a great, great, great start.
Okay, same question I had for Nightwing last week. Is this an easy enough jumping on point for new readers?
Yes, absolutely. There is really no indication of what was going on in the first 15 issues of the series. It feels like a completely fresh start, really great jumping on point. And the other thing about it is really that, if you've not been a long-time DC reader and you're not really familiar with some of the other takes on the characters, I think this gives you actually a nice taste of a different kind of Superman and a different kind of Batman. A great example, the Lex Luthor in the Superman story is not, in fact, businessman Lex Luthor, but harkens back more to the old Lex Luthor, the bald, mad scientist. So there's really something there if you like the history of some of these characters. I'm a big fan of this issue, and if it continues in the same vein, I think this is going to be a winner.
That's definitely something. I still have the issue 0 or issue 1 of Infinite Frontier that introduced all these new storylines that I have to check out. It's still sitting in a bag and board that I have to read, but I'm excited with this injection of life at DC, and I'm super excited to check a lot of these titles out.
All right, Chris, what do you have for us this week? I'm excited to see this particular nerd commendation.
All right, man. So usually we have nerd commendations that are like under the radar and stuff, but this is you kind of get a 2-for-1 thing here, because this is something that you nerd commended to me, and like let's just spend the next couple of minutes talking about how much we love Zelda Breath of the Wild, because like after the initial struggle of getting my bearings, not only just with the Switch console, but like the layout and like getting your necessary equipment and acclimating yourself to, I felt a lot like Link after 100 years of slumber, trying to figure out just which way was up. But once I got it, I mean, like, dude, this might be my favorite video game of all time. It's got everything I want. Open world is my number one go-to when it comes to like video games. Like, you say open world, I'm immediately interested. And then you inject the elements of fantasy that I just went so many years without, not having a lot of Zelda games, just for one reason or another. Like, it's everything I love about Lord of the Rings and in fantasy novels that I've grown up with. It's just so cool. Like the entire mythos of Hyrule and what I think I appreciate about this game, and I've literally done nothing else in my free time but play this game. Like, I'm behind on comics, I'm behind on shows and movies. Like, I've done nothing but play this game. And what I appreciated about the most is it's not this like extreme level of difficulty. It really just challenges you. It's almost like every task or every shrine or every boss fight is like a puzzle, and you have to like stop and pause and think about how you want to approach it. And so it's not like this whole boom, smash, crush, like just, bruiser your way through this game. It really takes this level of intellect and like challenge to where once like you get through and you accomplish something, you really feel just like this sense of elation and like you feel really great about yourself that like, yeah, I just did that. And so for the first couple of shrines, for example, that you had to solve this puzzle or the trial as the game calls it, you of course have to, look up walkthrough videos and articles. But once you kind of start to get used to it, like the tricks of the trade, and like you're able to solve it without Googling anything, or even if you like look up something, but you find a different way to accomplish the same goal, it's just so rewarding and it's so cool. I love everything about this game, and I'm probably not even like 25% through like the overall progress of it. So thank you for this game.
I'm telling you, I love Breath of the Wild. I love Zelda, period. And I really do think that Breath of the Wild may be my favorite game of all time. And man, I've played a lot of video games. I've been doing this nerdy gaming thing since I was, 6 years old. I've played every single Zelda game, and Breath of the Wild ranks even within Zelda games as one of my all-time favorites. A lot has been said about weapons breaking in the game and how frustrating that is, and many people find it extremely annoying. And it's the point that a lot of people turn back from the game. And even I was taken aback when I first started playing it a little bit. But the more you play this game, the more you get it. The game is not about brute force. It's about strategy. It's about learning to use the environment, about, waiting till nightfall and sneaking up on a camp and using the element of surprise, or stealing your enemy's weapons so they can't really fight back. There's so many different approaches and strategies if you're looking at, environmental things you can use and the Sheikah Slate abilities, that it is so much more of a cerebral game than a brute force game. Even with the weapons, since they are breaking, you constantly have to make smart choices. I'm going to save this weapon to use in this particular kind of fight. I'll rather use, the weapons that are not as strong in these simpler fights, even though I might have to use a few more hits with them. It's very strategic, and it's very much a thinking adventurer's game. And the best thing about the game by far is that it is truly open. I mean, the climbing mechanic is really revolutionary. How many open world games have you played where there's just a big mountain there, and it's like, oh, I guess I can't go that way. I have to go, this way instead. But man, here you can go anywhere. Once you get off of the plateau that serves sort of as the tutorial, you can go anywhere and do anything that you want to do, as long as you, stock up with the right provisions. Oh, you don't have a lot of stamina? Well, make sure you make some food that replenishes your stamina, and you can climb that tall mountain. There's some places you probably shouldn't go in the beginning, and there are things you probably shouldn't try to do unless you're powered up some first, but really nothing is stopping you. You could take on some of the toughest enemies straight out of the gate after leaving the Great Plateau. It's truly your choice. Climb anything, go anywhere, explore anything. And that spirit of exploration, it just runs through the entire game and makes it such a joy every time I fire up this game. It's just like, what am I going to do now? Where am I going to go? Which area have I not explored? I bring up that map. I'm like, okay, I've not really gone to this corner of the world. I wonder what's there. And that's truly the sense of an adventure game. I wonder what's over that next mountain. I wonder what's behind that next hill. I wonder what's across those woods or across that water. I'll just go and check it out. And that's really what makes this game a joy. God, I love this game, Kris. I cannot wait for the sequel. I wish there was some news on it. All we've gotten is a short teaser trailer. I've put 200 hours in this game, man. I'm ready for another one. Let's do this again.
Yeah, and to your point, I texted you this. I was super pissed about, breaking weapons and stuff. I had, what I thought was a very, very good weapon. I can't remember how I beat a boss or something to where I got this really wow, this must be a really good sword. And I took down 5 or 6 people and it broke. I was like, what the hell? This is supposed to be a really good sword. But you absolutely nailed it. It's you really just have to go inside yourself and strategize. You're like, okay, so this one only takes 8, but it's more durable. So I can take out these, 4 or 5 peon characters, but I'm going to save this 45 that is a little less durable for the boss. And so it's just this extra layer of strategy that it goes to it. And the way you laid that out, it made me reminiscent of being a kid and just going in your backyard or going to the park or, if you're in a wooded area, and just that sense of adventure. I mean, it makes you feel like a kid again. And I just absolutely love it. And the world that they've built, the mythos, the spirituality of the game is beautiful. I love everything about it. And I'm as soon as we stop the recording right now, I'm going to go play it some more. All right, that wraps up another episode of the Nerd Byword podcast. We thank you so much for joining us today and putting up with our nerdery. Be sure to head to Kickstarter and search for Twin Blades with Jarred Lujan. Thanks to Jarred for his time today. Aztecs and swords. It doesn't get much better than that. If you will, please, on your favorite podcasting app, leave us a 5-star rating and review. Tell us what you'd like to see in the future, ideas for future episodes. You can find this podcast wherever you get yours, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or our website, nerdbyword.com.
And please find us on social media and let us know what you think of the show. You can give us suggestions, interact a little with us. We'd love to hear from you. We are on Twitter. Our podcast is at Nerd Byword. We're also there individually at That Nerd Kris and at That Nerd Dave. Those same handles also apply, of course, to Instagram, and you can find us on Facebook at The Nerd Byword. We'd love to hear from you guys.
I've teased this for a little while, but we have some free digital comics and, free physical comics to give away. It's just taking a lot of time getting that sorted with everything going on. But be sure to stick to our social feeds for ways that you can win that as well. And as always, stay well and stay nerdy.
The Nerd Byword is written and produced by Kris and Dave, 2 nerds with a love of all things pop culture. The podcast features music by Al Jimenez and show art by Ashery Design. Find us at nerdbyword.com and wherever podcasts are available.